What are we fighting for, brothers? We're fighting for a righteous world. 2 Peter 3:13. We're fighting for a world of total righteousness. We're fighting for a world where we're going to be exalted, where we're going to be lauded, where we're going to be praised as the people of the Most High, as the Israelites, as the elect of the nation of Israel. Think about that, man. The elect of the nation of Israel, part of the 144,000. Think about that. Huh? That alone should inspire you. There's even a song, man, oh, when the saints come marching in. We're those saints that's going to come marching in. Oh, I want to be in that number. We're in that number. We believe that according to faith. Come on, brothers.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rukakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutations to the hopeful they got there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rukakwadash. And double honors to the apostle and elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutations to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bashim Al Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake of believers and listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashim Al Shai. All right, and we're going to continue on in the book of Acts. All right, made to the 10th chapter. And this is a very, controversial, chapter, dealing with Cornelius, our beloved elders, our beloved elder apostles, okay, of the main camp, always going to how, this was a very controversial topic in the old school, and even to this day, there's still discrepancy, okay, amongst, other camps about whether Cornelius is an Israelite or not, okay, and we know wholeheartedly by the Spirit, all right, that Cornelius is an Israelite, okay, according to the Spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Shai, okay, because we have to understand the story of, the uncircumcision, okay, the Greeks, okay, the Gentiles, Cornelius, in the New Testament. All these are our story, okay, as we all come, from being a no people, understanding that the scriptures speak about that Israel, you have a portion of Israel that will become a no people, okay, but those no people would come back, All right, a portion of those no people, all right, will come back through Yahushua. You see? So you have to understand that the Israelites, they kept the customs, they stayed in the land, they fought, to keep the law, all right, to keep the culture. They looked at those that were Hellenized, the descendants of those Hellenized Greeks, okay? Those Hellenized Jews, who were looked at as Greeks, they looked at them as a no people. Then they look at them as partakers of the inheritance of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They looked at them as a no people. They looked at them as cut off forever from the inheritance for the promises, okay, of the tribes. You see? So to these Israelite foreigners, these Hellenized Jews that was, considered Greeks by their culture, okay, those of the circumcision looked at them as a no people, okay? And these accounts, we read about in the New Testament is about a no people, okay, that will come back. All right. Also, we have a little history I want to go into dealing with how you had Jake in the Roman military. Just like you got Jake in Esau military. It's not you know, a it's not a complicated, sophisticated, okay, concept. Okay. Just as you have, Jake, the high ranking officers in Esau's military here, Colin Powell, you know, Secretary of Defense, the highest military rank you can have in the country. All right, Jake. And he said, and then word is he was one of the best to do it. Okay, typical Jake. Okay, so it's not a very complex concept when understanding that Cornelius could have easily been an Israelite, all right, or Jake in the Roman military. Okay, so I want to get into this. This is Acts 10:1. So let's start here. Got a few things we'll get into. But this is the book of Acts chapter 10, verse 1 said, there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band. Okay? And Jake, people read that and automatically assume, okay, this is an Edomite or this is of another nation. But mainly they think he's an Edomite because he's centurion of the Italian band. All right? And Italy, okay, is a country. Okay? Now Rome, all right, was in Italy. Okay, but the Roman Empire, was vast and spread across, the Mediterranean, okay, Northern Africa, Europe. You see? So just because he was from Italy, all right, because when you have the epistle, okay, of Rome, the book of Romans, it was written to who? Israelites in Rome. Okay, which Rome is in Italy. So why is it so far-fetched? Okay, that Jakes were in, okay, Rome. Okay, there was a major Israelite population in Rome, the city of Rome. Okay, so for one Jake to be a centurion, how is that so unfathomable? You see, it says a devout man and one that feared the Most High with all his house, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to the Most High always. Now, just to go into it, because the fact that he was a devout man, that he feared the Most High, that lets you know that this is a Jake, man. Esau don't have that in him, which you will get that. But just to show real quick, too, when you go to the book of Matthew, chapter 8, and verse 5, Yahushua dealt with a centurion. Okay? Cornelius wasn't the first centurion, okay, that came across the gospel, that had faith, that believed. When you go to Matthew 8 and 5, it says, and when Yahushua was entered into Capernaum, there came unto him a centurion, beseeching him and saying, Lord, my servant lieth at home sick of palsy, grievously tormented. And Yahushua said unto him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. So this centurion had what? Faith. Faith is an indicator, okay? Faith in Yahushua is an indicator that this is an Israelite. This is part of the spirit bearing witness with our spirit, okay? That we are the children of the Most High. So the fact that this centurion had this much faith in Yahushua is an indicator that this is an Israelite, okay? And it says, for I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me, and I say to this man, all right, go, and he goeth, and to another come, and he cometh, and to my servant do this, and he doeth it. When Yahushua heard it, he marveled and said to them that followed, verily I say unto you, I have found not so great, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. Okay, so this centurion had faith, even above those that knew that they were Israelites. Okay, and Yahushua marveled at his faith. But this is a Jake, and say unto you that many shall come from the east and west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, but the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. And there's those that knew that they were Israelites and refused Yahushua. Okay, there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. They was not going to be able to come into this understanding, which was going to have them preserved for the missiles, man. In this time, all right, these Jakes that knew that they was Israelites, they rejected Yahushua. You know, they was not going to be allowed to come into the truth in this time to fully get it, okay, which was going to preserve them for the nukes, man. Okay, they going to have to come back on the back end through those that believe. Okay, so, you know, it's another scripture that they'll try to use, you know, as replacement theology, like the Most High replaced Israelites with heathens. Nah, man, you just had some of the circumcision, not all, but you had, you know, you had a portion of the circumcision that didn't believe. Okay, and they will be preserved for a punishment for rejecting Yahushua, man. They wouldn't be allowed to come into the truth. Okay, even some will be allowed to know that they're Israelites in this time, but fully won't come into the truth, man. Fully won't submit to Yahushua. Okay, but then you had those back then that was over no people, which were Israelites who had lost their way, came up in the custom of the heathen, and will return through all our faith in Yahushua, man. Okay, and will be the first fruits of the kingdom. Verse 13, it says, and Yahushua said unto the centurion, go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. And his servant was healed in the self same hour. So Yahushua dealt with a centurion in the book of Matthew, the 8th chapter. Now, if this was of another nation, wouldn't this contradict what he told the disciples in Matthew, the 10th chapter? Okay. This is Matthew 10:5. It said, these 12 Yahushua sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not in the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Okay, so if Yahushua just dealt with an actual heathen, you see, and that heathen had faith. Okay, and through that faith, his servant was healed. But then he turns around and say, only teach to the house of Israel. Okay, that will be a contradiction, man. Nah, Yahushua knew that centurion was an Israelite. Okay, so the Yahushua dealt with centurion in Matthew the 8th chapter. So we get to Cornelius, which is a centurion. It's like, okay, what's the big fuss? Okay, but the Lord has certain things in the scriptures that are meant to be stumbling blocks, man. You know, because through Yahweh Shai, there's supposed to be a great stumbling. There's a great rise. All right, as it says, this child is set for the rise and fall of many in Israel. Okay, so the scriptures are full of stumbling blocks. Now, uh, real quick, let's go here. Yeah, so let's get this here in the chat real quick. So I just asked it. Let me see. So I asked the chat of the Israelites living amongst the Romans during the time of the apostles. Okay, and it says yes, absolutely. It said Israelites, Jews were living throughout the Roman world during the time of the apostles in a very large number. This is not a marginal or debated point. It is one of the central historical realities of the first century. Below is a clear structure overview. The Israelite diaspora was widespread before the apostles. By the time Yahweh Shai and the apostles, all right, um, first century CE, more Jews live outside Judea than inside it. More Jews live outside Judea than inside it. Okay, and that's why the Lord calls what the gospel to branch out. Okay, to spread out outside of Judea, as we read in Acts. You know, when the persecution of Jerusalem came, of the church of Jerusalem, the believers of Jerusalem, they were scattered, where the Spirit was on them to continue to preach outside of Judea. Okay, there's a lot of Jake outside of Judea, man. You gotta we gotta deal with the reality of what's going or what was happening back then. Okay, so it says this dispersion is usually called the diaspora. Major diaspora centers included Rome, tens of thousands of Jews, Alexandria, Egypt, possibly the largest Israelite population outside Judea. All right, Antioch, one of the early, all right, Christian centers, Asia Minor, which is modern day Turkey. Okay, is where you have, you know, the churches of Revelation. Okay, is in Asia Minor. All right, it says Greece and Macedonia, Mesopotamia and Babylon. This dispersion had existed for centuries, beginning with the Assyrian exile, the Babylonian exile. Okay, continued migration under Persian, Greek, and Roman rule. Jews in Rome itself, archaeological and literally evidence are Jews lived in Rome from at least the 2nd century BCE. By the 1st century CE, multiple synagogues existed in Rome. All right, Israelite catacombs, all right, had been discovered. Roman writers such as Cicero, Tacitus, okay, and Sentius, all right, Suetonius mentioned Jews in Rome. Okay, Aquila, a Jew native of Pontus, had recently come from Italy, okay, with his wife Priscilla. Okay, Acts 18:2. This shows Jews lived in Rome. They moved freely within the empire. They were involved in trades, tent making, social status, not outsiders, but not fully assimilated. Jews in Roman society were legally recognized as religio licita, all right, a permitted religion, had the right to observe Sabbath, keep kosher, send money to the temple in Jerusalem, live in ethnic neighborhoods, but interacted daily with Romans. Okay, many were merchants, artisans, freedmen, some wealthy patrons. Okay, so you had language and culture, two broad cultural groups. All right, it's a Hebraic speaking Jews, more common in Judea, Hellenized Jews, Greek speaking, common in the diaspora. Most diaspora Jews read scripture in Greek, used Greek or Latin names, participated in Greco-Roman urban life. Okay, the apostles themselves often interacted with these communities. Okay, it says the New Testament assumed Jewish, all right, well, Israelite presence everywhere. Acts 2 Jews from across the Roman world in Jerusalem. Acts 13:28, Paul begins his preaching in synagogues in Cyprus, Asia Minor, Macedonia, Greece, Rome. Romans 16, okay, greetings to Israelite believers in Rome, Philippians, Corinthians, Thessalonians, churches, all right, with Israelite members in Roman cities. Paul missionary strategically only works because Jews are already embedded in Roman cities. Paul's missionary strategy only works because Jews were already embedded in Roman cities. All right, Roman cities, man. Okay, you know, come on, man. So when you get to Cornelius being a centurion, man, that's light. That's a light thing, man. Okay, Jake was in Rome tough, all right, and Jake was dealing in Rome as we just read. They were dealing with, different professions, okay, and even when you get here, because even in 70 A.D., all right, the general that helped Titus take down, let's go here. They helped Titus take Jake down. Okay. It says this is Tiberius Julius Alexander. It said you can tell this is straight Jake, man. Okay. This is straight Jake. Okay, and it's gonna let you know. It said the general you're likely thinking of is Tiberius Julius Alexander, a prominent, all right, say Jewish, but we know Israelite equestrian who served as a prefect of Egypt and was second in command to Titus during the crucial siege of Jerusalem in 70 CE, a major military operation that destroyed the Second Temple. He was a key figure in the Flavian dynasty's rise, commanding legions and playing a vital role in securing Vespasian's claim to the throne before leading the formidable siege. Okay, so perfect of Egypt in 66 to 69 CE, he brutally suppressed Israelite revolts in Alexander, showcasing his military might. Let's see. All right, it says he wasn't the Emperor Tiberius who reigned 14, all right, to 37 AD, but rather a different powerful Roman official with similar names from a wealthy Israelite background who embraced Roman services. Okay, so Jake had made it all the way to the office of prefect. Okay, and let's go into what a prefect is. All right, just to show you that Jake was all in Rome and Jake had high positions in Rome, man. So Cornelius being a centurion, okay, or that centurion Howard Shah dealt with in the book of Matthew, okay, was an Israelite, man. Okay, so we go into what is an equestrian and prefect. All right, it says a equestrian is a person involved with horses or horseback riding, while the prefect is a magistral, all right, title for an official in charge of an administrative area, with both terms having significant historical context in ancient Rome. It says an equestrian is anyone skilled or involved with horses and horsemanship activities like riding, training, or racing. All right. It says the equites equestrians were the second tier of the Roman imperial elite, a wealthy business class ranking below the senatorial class. They were essential to the imperial civic service, all right, and army, filling many senior administrative and military roles. Filling many, and this was a Jake, filling many senior administrative and military roles. To be an equestrian person had to meet a specific wealth threshold, and the position opened doors to important government and military careers across the empire. Prefect, a general definition, the title of prefect, okay, or meaning to put in front or in charge, refers to a leader of an administration area or unit. Prefects were Roman officials, often from the equestrian class, appointed to various significant military and civil positions by the emperor. Okay, so this is a Jake that rose up, pretty much to the highest military rank that you can have in Rome. Okay, just like Colin Powell did, man. Okay, so having a Jake that's a centurion, which will be, similar to, like a police chief for today, in modern terms. Okay, so how likely is that? You see, and you had Jakes all in Rome, all intertwined. Okay, in the midst of Rome, even though they knew that they was Israelites, they still was in Rome and they had to deal. They had dealings with Rome. Even the ones that knew that they was Israelites, man. Okay, so you had synagogues, because how was Cornelius able to come into the customs, Israelite customs in Rome? Because you had synagogues in Rome, and so he was a devout man. He was devout to what? Okay, because you still had the customs of Israel throughout the Greco-Roman Empire. You had synagogues everywhere. Jake was everywhere, man, throughout the Greco-Roman Empire. Okay, so you go back on so go wrong. So now you go back to the book of Acts. Just want to go into their history. Okay, you can't just read the precept, on the surface, and that's what Christians do. They stay on the surface. Okay, and they're able to create these, these doctrines. Okay, based off, Italian band. So now everybody can be saved because of the word Italian band, but not really understand the history of Jake. Okay, within the Roman Empire, within Rome itself. Okay, it says, so let's read from the top. This is Acts 10:1. There was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band, a devout man, and one that feared the Most High with all his house, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to the Most High always. He saw in a vision evidently about the ninth hour of the day. Okay, and who did he give alms to? Those synagogues that was in Rome. Okay, because he was stationed in Caesarea. Okay, so you had synagogues everywhere, man. Okay, because Rome had took over a lot of those coastal cities, for the sake of ports for shipping, and Caesarea was one of them. Okay, so he gave alms to what? To these synagogues, man, to Jake. Okay, he said he saw in a vision evidently about the ninth hour of the day, an angel of the Most High coming in to him and saying unto him, Cornelius. And when he looked on him, he was afraid and said, What is it, Lord? And he said unto him, Thy prayers and thy alms are come up for a memorial before the Most High. And now send me, it said, and now send men to Joppa and call for one Simon, whose surname is Peter. Okay, so the Lord was hearing his prayer. He was seeing his alms. He was seeing how devout, Cornelius was, which it was predestined, for him to be in that spirit. Okay, because through him, the doors to the Israelite foreigners were going to be open. Okay, because the office was for Apostle Paul. Because remember, Apostle Paul had just been converted. So now Apostle Peter is opening the door to the Gentiles, which was the office of the Apostle Paul. Okay, perfect timing. The Lord timing is always perfect, man. It says, and now send me to Joppa and call for one Simon, whose surname is Peter. He lodged with one Simon Tanner. Okay, Simon a tanner. Okay, which a tanner was someone that turned animal skins into usable material, whether blankets or clothing, okay, or you know, um, for rugs or whatever. They turn, animal skin, okay, into usable, okay, products. Okay. It said he lodged with one Simon a tanner, whose house is by the seaside. He shall he shall tell thee what thou oughtest to do. Let's get this in. And it says, and when the angel which spake unto Cornelius was departed, he called two of his household servants and a devout soldier of them that waited on him continually. And when he had declared all these things unto them, he sent them to Joppa on the morrow, and they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city. Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour, and became very hungry, and would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance. And it says, and saw heaven open, and a certain vessel descending unto him, as it had been a great sheet knit at the four corners and let down to the earth, wherein all manner of the four-footed beasts of the earth, and the wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, No, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. Okay, and this shows you that Yahushua wasn't, the scriptures say, a minister of sin. Okay, because Peter, he walked with Yahushua. Okay, but he was keeping the law. He was keeping the law. All the apostles, they didn't just do what they want because Yahushua was going to be their sacrifice. And even after Yahushua, because this is after Yahushua, all right, has been back to the Father, has went back to the Father. Okay, so they were still continuing in the law, but they knew they wasn't going to be justified by the law. But this shows you that the apostles, they still continue to keep the law. Okay, Yahushua didn't come to do away with the law or to push not to keep the law. Okay, it was all about him giving us grace to where when we fall short, we have a covering. We have a sacrifice that covers our shortcomings in the law. Okay, well, this shows you that Peter continued in the law, man. Okay, so as he's getting his vision of these unclean animals, and then, he's hearing the voice that telling him, to eat. So Peter, like, he's messed up. He fully doesn't understand what's happening. Okay, in the midst of this, it says, and the voice spake unto him again the second time, what the Most High have cleansed, that called thou coming. This was done thrice, and the vessel was received up again. Okay, and the vessel was received up again into heaven. Now, while Peter doubted in himself with his vision, which he had seen, should mean, behold, the men which were sent from Cornelius had made inquiry of Simon's house and stood before the gate. Okay, so the men that were sent by Cornelius to, go and retrieve Peter as soon as he finishes, having this vision. He had it 3 times. All right, and 3 goes to understanding. Remember, Yahushua told Peter 3 times what? Feed his sheep. Feed his sheep. Peter, do this, thou love me, feeds my sheep. He told him that 3 times. Peter had this vision, 3 times. Okay, he denied Yahushua 3 times. So the Spirit, working heavy with Peter being the head of the church. Okay, but this was also part of the sheep of Yahushua. Okay, these Israelite foreigners. Okay, so he had this vision 3 times. Okay, which was confirmation. Okay, and then what happened soon as he finished with the vision? The messengers of Cornelius showed up. Okay, because that's what the vision meant. Okay, those that was looked at as unclean by the circumcision. Okay, because if you lived, you know, as a Roman, okay, well, majority of the time you was unclean according to the law. You was in a perpetual state of being unclean according to the law. Okay, and I say the circumcision looked at them as a no people. It says and called and asked, or verse 18, it says and called and asked whether Simon, which was surnamed Peter, were lodged there. While Peter thought on the vision, the Spirit said unto him, Behold, 3 men seek thee. Arise, therefore, and get thee down and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent them. So this is the Lord orchestrating this, man. The Spirit telling Peter, look, go down with those men, okay? Go where they take you and doubt nothing. I sent them. You see, so it's the Lord is orchestrating this, man. You see? It says, Then Peter went down to the men which were sent unto him from Cornelius and said, Behold, I am he whom ye seek. What is the cause wherefore you are come? And they said, Cornelius the centurion, a just man. Okay? That's reserved for Israelites, man. And one that feared the Most High. Okay? Israel, man. And a good report among all the nation of the Jews was warned from the Most High by an holy angel to send for thee into his house and to hear, all right, words of thee, okay, to hear him preach. So he was being called to preach this word, man. The Lord was, because this is how you know that things are appointed by the Most High, because this was the appointed time for the word to be opened up to Israelite foreigners. Okay, that's why the Spirit is so heavy as we read, the visions, the timing, the messengers sent, the Spirit telling Peter, look, go with these men, doubt nothing. Okay, this was that appointed time for the Israelite foreigners to come in. Okay, so the Lord is making moves. Okay, and He's showing all these signs to let everyone involved know, like, this is of me. Okay, so there won't be no doubt and second guessing. No, this is of me. The Spirit was very hands-on in this. Acts 10:23 said, Then called he them in and lodged them, and on the morrow Peter went away with them, and certain brethren from Joppa accompanied him. And the morrow after, it says, and the morrow after they entered into Caesarea, and Cornelius waited for them, and had called together his kinsmen and near friends. So Cornelius calls everyone, his kinsmen and near friends. He just a house full of them. By the time Peter get there, it's a house full of Jake. Cornelius and his kinsmen, his friends. Okay, because the Spirit was going to open up. Okay, the Lord was setting something up, man. It said, and as Peter was coming in, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshiped him. But Peter took him up, saying, Stand up, I myself also am a man. So he, the apostle, like, look, don't worship me, I'm a man. Okay, no matter, the power that, is bestowed upon me, his rank amongst the church, he like, no, I'm just a man, stand up, let's deal. And it says, and he talked with him. It says, as he talked with him, he went in and found many that were come together. And he said unto them, Ye know how that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company, okay, or coming to one of another nation. But the Most High has showed me that I should not call any man common or unclean. Okay, so when you go into this, which they use this is one of their go-to precepts to show that Cornelius, okay, was not an Israelite. All right, what you have to remember, amongst the circumcision, these Israelite foreigners, okay, these Greco-Roman, Israelites, were looked at as a no people. Okay, they didn't look at them as a part of Israel anymore. They looked at them as a no people, a people that were just cut off. Okay, and you go into this word. Let's go here. And then you go into the word common. Okay.
Strong's G 2839, koinos. Koinos.
Koinos. Okay. It says common, it says, i.e., ordinary, belonging to generality. It says, by the Jews, unhallowed, profane, Levitically unclean. Okay, Levitically unclean, because remember, Peter said, look, I never partook in any of these foods. You know, that blanket that was dropped down with those unclean foods. Okay, because like those Israelite foreigners was in the perpetual state of uncleanness. Okay, according to the law, but according to the grace, Yahweh Shah was going to make them, was going to bring them back. Yahweh Shah was going to make them clean through grace. Okay, so according to the law, all right, they was in a perpetual state of uncleanness, man. Okay, because I say the disciples, well, which became apostles, they was keeping the law. They grew up in the customs. They wasn't, you know, amongst the elite of Jake. Okay, but the law was coming. All right, was common customs for them, man. There was a common thing unto them to keep the law. Okay, so going amongst these Israelite foreigners that were completely into, okay, the culture of the heathens. All right, they kept them Levitically, all right, unclean according to the law. Okay, and according to the law, you wasn't supposed to even be around it. You see, but it was the Spirit that gave the green light for the apostles to step into the arena of the Israelite foreigners, man. Beginning with the head of the church, the Apostle Peter. Okay, so because even when you go into another nation, when you go to the book of Hosea, all right, which Hosea dealt with a harlot, okay, and they represented Israel dealing, you know, with harlots with other gods, you know, not being faithful to their power. All right, so all these children that Hosea has by this harlot, okay, is telling the story, okay, dealing with Jake. Okay, now when you go to Hosea 1 and 8, all right, I say all these children and their names, okay, tell a story, okay, of the Lord and how he would, you know, disregard Jake, but then he will have mercy on Jake. Okay, so you go to Hosea 1 and 8 said, now when she had weaned Lara Hama, all right, she conceived and bare a son. Then said the Most High, call his name Lo Ami, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your power. And remember, this is Israelites he's saying this to. Okay, so by the time we get to the book of Acts, okay, you have a people that's a no people, because the Lord will continue to allow us to be scattered. We read that in Rome, all right, in the chat, how we were scattered through these different captivities, man. Okay, and a lot of our people, they completely fell away, okay, from who they were, the customs, the law. All right, so those that remain of the circumcision, they looked at Jake as a no people. Okay, you know, because even go to their word. All right, it's la'ah. Let me see. When you go into the word itself, Okay, so the word in Hebrew is la'ah, amayah. All right, Allah, amayah. Okay, it goes into what? Not my people. Okay, not my people. You see, so Jacob was looked at as a no nation, man. And then even when you go here to Isaiah, he will be found by those same people that the circumcision considered no people, because as many of the circumcision reject Yahushua, well, you have many of the Israelite foreigners that believe in Yahushua. Isaiah 65:1 said, I am salt of them that are not, it said, I am salt of them that ask not for me. I am fount of them that sought me not. I said, behold me unto a nation that was not called by my name. Okay, because they wasn't going by the name of Israelites. They weren't calling themselves, by the tribes. Apostle Paul said, what? I'm Israelite, okay, of the tribe of Benjamin. Okay, these Israelite foreigners, they didn't know their registry. Okay, they wasn't called by their name. They couldn't. You see, because you even had then people able to link themselves back. They had the registry, they had the lineages. Some people had their lineages. Okay. But then you had the Israelite foreigners, they had fell far away from them. They couldn't give you their registry, man. Okay. But through the sacrifice of Yahushua, okay, eventually the Lord will send the apostles, okay, to go gather, his sheep outside of Judea, which was amongst, okay, those considered no people. So this was very uncommon what the apostle Peter was doing. Okay, but the Spirit had demanded this of him because it was their time. Okay, so let's go back here. As a matter of fact, people, the Apostle Peter, as he's writing to, just to give the example. Okay, so you go to the book of 1 Peter chapter 1, and verse 1 said, Peter, an apostle of Yahushua HaMashiach, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. Okay, so he's writing to Israelite foreigners. And when you go into the next verse, the next chapter, 1 Peter 2:9, it said, but ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood. Now, why is he writing things addressed to the Israelites in Exodus? Why is he writing it? Why is he writing this, okay, in this epistle? Because they're Israelites. He's addressing the same people, okay, which had became what? Gentiles and Greeks according to culture, not according to lineage. Okay, it says, in holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praise of him who have called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, man. And this is our story. Okay, we have the testimony of being called out of darkness into this marvelous light. We was a no people, Americans, Jamaicans, Mexicans, man. That's a no people. That's not reverence in the scriptures. Okay, we couldn't go to the temple and say we was a Mexican. That wasn't recognized, man. That's a no people according to the scriptures. That was darkness, man. And the culture that came with it was darkness. Okay, but through Yahushua, just as these Israelite foreigners, through Yahushua, okay, we're the sons of God again. You see, 1 Peter 2:10 says, which in time past were not a people. Okay, but are now the people of the Most High, which had obtained mercy, but now we have obtained mercy, man. Okay, so it's through Yahushua, what would be considered a no people, okay, have been brought back in through mercy, man, through their sacrifice. And this was part of the joy that was set before Yahushua, man. Okay, he wanted their remnant to come back, and he knew through the remnant the rest of the nation was gonna be good. Okay, so Yahweh Shah put a major play together for us in this time, man. This was part of the joy. He knew what we was gonna go through. He knew we was gonna become a no people again. Okay, and would need to be brought into this light again. Okay, in his last time before he returns. It said, verse 29, back in Acts 10 and 29, therefore came I to you without gainsaying, as soon as I was sent for, I asked, therefore, for what intent you have sent for me. And Cornelius said, 4 days ago, I was fasting until this hour. My family, this in the rest of the NLT. This is on Acts 10 and 29 in NLT. Says, so I came without objection as soon as I was sent for. Now tell me why you sent for me. Cornelius replied, 4 days ago, I was praying in my house about this same time, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Suddenly a man in dazzling clothes was standing in front of me, an angel. He told me, Cornelius, your prayer has been heard, and your gifts to the poor have been noticed by the Most High. Now send messengers to Joppa and summon a man named Simon Peter. He is staying in the home of Simon, a tanner who lives near the seashore. So I sent for you at once, and it was good of you to come. Now we are all here, waiting before the Most High to hear the message the Lord has given you. It says, the Gentiles, okay. It said, then Peter replied, I see very clearly that the Most High shows no favoritism. Okay, so it was all meant for the Apostle Peter to come and preach this word to Cornelius and his house, okay, and his relatives, man. Okay, in every nation he accepts those who fear him. All right, and this is the nation, the tribes, man. Matter of fact, let's go here. This is speaking of the tribes, man. Okay. Because you're going to a Greek word, which is ethnos. So we, okay, because you're going to the word nations. What's it? I don't know if they changed, but it used to go into Israel. Let me see. No, that wasn't it. It looked like they changed it. Yeah, because it used to go into, Israel. Okay. But when it speaks of every nation, because you also had to factor in, the northern tribes wasn't there. You had a very small little sprinkle here and there, but the northern tribes wasn't there. Okay, because each tribe is like a nation unto itself. Okay, and like I said, this is the Apostle Peter dealing with these Israelite foreigners that was looked at like as a no people, like they was of a complete, different people, but they are Israelites. Okay, they're still the descendants of a promise, even though they went through what they went through, being Hellenized, amongst the Greeks. They were still of the nation of Israel. They were still of that ethnos, okay, the lineage of Israel. And it says, so back in Acts 10 and 35, it said, in every nation he accept those who fear him and do what is right. This is the message of good news for the people of Israel, that there is peace. Okay, this is the message of good news for the people of Israel, that there is peace with the Most High through Yahweh Shah Mashiach, who is Lord of all. So why would he immediately go into this is the message of good news for the people of Israel if he was talking to an actual another nation, man? Okay, it says, you know what happened throughout Judea, beginning in Galilee after John began preaching his message of baptism, and you know that the Most High anointed Yahushua of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit and with power. Then Yahushua went around doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil, for the Most High was with him. And we apostles are witnesses of all he did throughout Judea and Jerusalem. They put him to death by hanging him on the cross, but the Most High raised him to life on the third day. Then the Most High allowed him to appear, man. And only Israelites gonna believe in the resurrection, man. Okay? It said, not to the general public, but to us whom the Most High has chosen in advance to be his witnesses. We are those who ate and drank with him after he rose from the dead, and he ordered us to preach everywhere and testify that Yahushua is the one appointed by the Most High to be the judge of all, the living and the dead. He is the one, I said, he is the one all the prophets testified about, saying that everyone who believes in him will have their sins forgiven through his name. And who is being accountable? Who is being held accountable for their sins? Israel. Okay. Who was the one that was being held accountable for sinning? Was Israelites, man. Who was in debt to the Most High because of sin? Israel. Yahushua came to pay the debt of Israelites, man. Okay, the quick and the dead. Okay, those that was spiritually dead, Yahushua came to revive. Okay, through the word, which what Yahushua say, the word is life, it quickeneth. Okay, the understanding, okay, the truth, man, of the gospel, of prophecy, man. Okay, Acts 10:44. It said, even as Peter was saying these things, and it's a spirit, 144. All right, 10:44. Even as Peter was saying these things, the Holy Spirit fell upon all who were listening to the message. The Holy Spirit fell upon all who were listening to the message, man. You see, it says the Israelite believers who came with Peter were amazed that the gift of the Holy Spirit had been poured out on the Gentiles too. Okay, those Israelites that was considered Gentiles by the circumcision. Okay, because of their background, their customs. For they heard them speaking in other tongues and praising the Most High. Heathens don't get this, man. Heathens don't get the gifts of the Spirit, man. Okay, then Peter asked, can anyone object to their being baptized now that they have received the Holy Spirit just as we did? So he gave orders for them to be baptized in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. Afterward, Cornelius asked him to stay with them for several days. Okay, so this is heavy, man. Okay, this is a heavy moment. Okay, dealing with prophecy, in which the Lord has allowed the word to be opened up to the Israelite foreigners. And it started with Peter. Okay, but we know, all right, that Peter was laying the groundwork for the Apostle Paul, to fulfill his office, to those Israelite foreigners, So that's the point, just wanted to get into that. All right, so they conclude chapter 10 in the book of Acts, so Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters are edified once again. We give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Kakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great example to us, young brothers, and peace and blessings, salutations to the hopeful Shalom.